You might have heard that many students fail APM. You might have even failed it yourself. And you probably have heard also that main reasons for failure are things such as answering a different question from the question that's being asked, as well as not justifying the points made or not linking the knowledge that students have to the specific scenario. And while you know now that you should work on fixing those, I want to show you how you can fix it so you have a better understanding and better idea, and you get better able to do that in your exam. So I'm going to use a question, past exam question called Ghaill, and I will show you by looking at a couple of requirements exactly those weaknesses and how you can fix them. So here is question Ghaill from the September 2024 exam sitting. And we're first of all looking at part A, which is 5 marks. The first thing we care about, 5 marks, so we need about 5 points. And that should relate to service businesses. Now, you guys have to be very careful here. You need to understand, you probably know that already anyway, but you don't just dump anything you know about service businesses because you've seen this in the requirements. That requirement alone is not enough to tell you exactly what you need to do in relation to service businesses. And that is so crucial. So you need to go to the exhibit which relates to service businesses. In this case, that's number 2 here. And you have to find out exactly what the requirement wants. What is your task? So you have to scan it briefly to find out what the CEO, the FD, or whoever else it is that is giving you the tasks wants from you. In this question, it is the performance director, the new performance director of the company, and she has asked you for an explanation of the SHIP acronym. And don't panic at that stage if you can't remember what SHIP was about, because the examiner kindly has told you that is the characteristics of services provided by service businesses. So you're told what each of the letters stands for. And that's not the only thing, though. Notice your task is not just to explain those characteristics, but also how they specifically relate to Ghaill. So if you're not careful here, what you could do is, if you've made it to this embedded requirement, just talk about the meaning of SHIP. So for example, you could say simultaneity means that the service takes place at the time that customer is consuming it, and then it's gone. It all happens at the same place, and that's it. Then you can explain the other ones in a similar way and move on. But if you do that, you won't do very well in this requirement, because the 5 points that you need to make shouldn't be just the general knowledge. Note the task was saying, not just explain those characteristics, but quite importantly, how they specifically relate to Ghaill. For the PD, it's not going to be very helpful if you just tell her some theory. What she would like to know is what that means in terms of her business. And that's why you have to relate it to the scenario. It's an absolute must. So here, under each heading, or subheading rather, I have explained, as you can see briefly, what that means, what simultaneity, for example, but then I've related to the specific scenario where we have the company that is a ferry. So that means if the service is consumed at the same time as it is provided, that's when passengers are being transported, that's when they consume the service. And if you ask yourself the question, so what, why is this important? You can go on to explain the potential impact. If the service is consumed at the time that it is provided, if any issues arise with the service, there isn't any time to fix them, because at the same time of providing the service and the issues arising, that service is being consumed. Similarly, for heterogeneity, of course, that the meaning is that each service is different from the other services provided, even though they are the same type of service. Depending on who provides the service, who consumes the service, when, and so on, it's different from having products made for mass production, which are all standard, all the same. And again, relating it to the specific scenario, to the company we have in context. The ferry journeys, they're not like each other. Each journey is unique. And the scenario tells us that they all take different time because based on different destinations. The distance is different, the weather could be different, the conditions of the sea at the time of travel could be different. Some of them are during the day, some of them are overnight, and all of that means that they're heterogeneous. Similarly, with the intangibility characteristics, where we say you can't touch the service, it's not got any physical substance. You can't touch the ferry journey. You can touch the ferry itself, but not the service that it gives you. And the implication of that, again, this is the value that they get from their experience. But of course, how passengers feel is a very subjective matter, isn't it? And that can open a whole can of worms. But notice I don't go crazy with over-explaining, because I keep in mind that there are 5 marks on offer. And if there are 5 marks on offer, I can make 5 justified, well-justified points, and that's it. Anything more than that would be overloading the PD, the performance director, with information that they don't have time to deal with. So let's look next at part B, which is 6 marks, which means 6 points. Again, not very long, not too much writing here. That relates to the building block model, something we know is very popular in the exam. And more precisely, not all of building blocks, it's about the determinants. It's about the areas under which we need to measure performance, under which we need to assign KPIs normally. So again, just that means nothing. So while we can use it as a main heading, we actually want to find out what exactly we need to do in the embedded requirements. So we find that exhibit, that's number 3, building block model determinants, and we scan it again to find out the specific requirement. So what regarding the determinants actually do we need to do here? I'm going to look, and I'm looking for what the PD wants from me. So there, the PD has asked you to evaluate, look at this, to evaluate the suitability of the potential measure of individual journeys per ferry for this determinant. Very specific and very narrow. So that means that you, friends, don't want to write everything you know about the building blocks, not even everything you know about the determinants block, but this is very specific. Firstly, if they're asking you to evaluate the suitability of something, it means you have to look both ways. Is it suitable, or what is good about it? What makes it suitable? Is it not? What makes it not suitable? And draw the line to say whether overall you find it suitable or not based on what you have talked about. And then you have to consider a potential very specific KPI, individual journeys per ferry. So for that determinant, and then you have to find out which determinant exactly are they talking about. Journeys per ferry, you might have already figured out which one this is, but you actually told it's the determinant of resource utilization, which is basically about efficiency, isn't it? So is it suitable to use individual journeys per ferry to measure the efficiency, the resource utilization of Ghaill, of the ferry company? What's good about using it, what's not so good, and overall, is it suitable or not? Again, considering all the information in the scenario, identifying what the objectives are and what are the critical success factors, because a KPI is only useful if it addresses the critical areas that the company needs to be good at, and if it helps achieve the objectives. So find the objective if you have forgotten. That's always important, and you will see objective to maximize returns for owners of the business for providing an excellent service for customers. And here we're mostly interested in the next bit, which says optimizing the use of its assets and developing a learning culture. So while the other things are not exactly very relevant to resource utilization, optimizing the use of its assets is. And based on what we've seen in the scenario, we have to think about how we structure it. So I would go good, bad, and overall. Here, so under the what is good heading, I thought about some reasons why using that KPI could be helpful. And that's what we think, evaluating the usefulness of the KPI. Why could it be helpful? And that is because if you think about, relating the journeys being the output and the ferry being the input, the more journeys you have per ferry, the more efficient you are. And that shows greater resource utilization generally. And you want to increase that KPI for that reason to match the company's objective. However, what we've seen in the scenario is that those journeys are not all the same. Some of them take longer, some of them are on specific routes and so on. And that means that not all ferries are able to make as many journeys. And if you think about the longer journeys, for example, a ferry that travels a longer distance will inevitably have less ferries, less journeys per ferry compared to the ones which go and go back and forth quite quickly. Also, the fact that they only consider the journeys per ferry, but not the passengers. What's the point in having a lot of journeys per ferry, which is nearly empty? That means that it's still underutilized, this asset, so it's not exactly very helpful like this. And I drew the line, having my balanced assessment, my evaluation, where I decided personally that this KPI could be kept, but it needs tailoring in relation to the different divisions, which have different types of journeys and length. And also maybe consider an extra KPI to the mix, because an extra KPI could measure the passengers per ferry, the vehicles per ferry, and improve the understanding. It can also be applied to all the divisions, because the ferries at least have similar size and similar capacity. Notice I didn't write too much. I kept thinking about how many marks are there on offer, and I made sure that what I put in here addresses directly the requirement. Why is it useful? Why is it not useful? I gave a very clear overall opinion with a justification as to why I think this could stay or this could be changed in whatever way. And that's more than enough if you just convert them in proper sentences. What I'm showing you here is not the full answer. It's like an extended plan. So you want to make sure they're actually with proper sentences under the subheadings when you write your answer. But that's the amount that I would look for. And that is how I would make sure that it's both justified and relevant to the scenario. And of course, the first and main thing, it's relevant to the requirement as well. So if you need more help with APM, if you consider that it would be useful for you to have someone that guides you through questions, that shows you potential sample answers, and just teaches you how to build an answer that is effective and to do that efficiently, then get in touch with me. I have been teaching APM for quite a while. I used to do that at London School of Business and Finance, and I do it at the moment through AMA Learn Online, where I offer my online courses. So yeah, get in touch if you need any help.